The stars were cold and silent outside the window of the UES Defiance. Captain Sarah Chen stood alone on the observation deck. Her hands clasped behind her back, she watched the distant lights of 1,000 suns and thought about how small humanity was in this vast universe. 300 years. That was how long humans had traveled among the stars. 300 years, since the first ship left Earth and found that the galaxy was already full of life. Ancient life. Powerful life. Life that looked at humans the way humans once looked at ants. The door behind her opened with a soft hiss. Her first officer, Commander Williams, stepped inside. His face was pale and worried. "Captain, we have received a priority transmission from Earth Command. It is from Admiral Vance himself." Sarah turned slowly. Admiral James Vance was the highest commander in the human fleet. He did not make calls for small matters. Something was very wrong. "Put it through to the conference room," she said. "I will take it there." She walked through the metal corridors of her ship. The Defiance was the pride of the human fleet. It had taken 20 years to build and carried the most advanced weapons humanity had ever created. But Sarah knew the truth that kept her awake at night. Compared to the elder species of the galaxy, the Defiance was a toy, a child's plaything. She entered the conference room and locked the door behind her. The holographic projector hummed to life, and Admiral Vance appeared before her. He was an old man, with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He had fought in 3 wars and buried 2 sons who had died defending human colonies. His eyes were hard as iron. "Captain Chen," he said. "Thank you for responding so quickly. Admiral, what has happened?" Vance was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something Sarah had never heard from him before. It was not fear. It was something deeper, something like the feeling before a great storm. "The Galaxy Council has issued an ultimatum to humanity." Sarah felt her heart grow cold. The Galaxy Council was a coalition of 47 species. They had ruled the Orion arm of the galaxy for 12 million years. 12 million years. Humanity had existed for only a fraction of that time. The Council saw humans as children. Worse than children. They saw humans as pests. "What do they want?" Sarah asked. "Everything," Vance replied. "They want us to submit. To kneel. To become a servant species like so many others before us. They want our technology, our resources, our freedom. They want us to admit that we are nothing." Sarah's hands became fists at her sides. "And if we refuse?" The hologram flickered as Vance pulled up a star chart. Sarah's blood turned to ice when she saw it. The Sol system, humanity's birthplace, was surrounded by red dots. Thousands of red dots. "The hegemony fleet," Vance said quietly. 10,000 warships from 12 species. They have positioned themselves at the edge of our home system. They have also sent forces to each of our 47 colony worlds. If we do not submit, they will begin the cleansing. Cleansing. Such a clean word for such a terrible thing. Sarah had seen what happened to species that the Council cleansed. Empty worlds, dead cities. Bones turned to dust. Nothing left but silence and ash. "How long do we have?" she asked. 3 days. "The Council has demanded that a human representative appear before them at Nexus Prime to deliver our answer. If we do not appear, or if our answer is not acceptable, the attack begins." Sarah looked at the star chart. 10,000 ships. Humanity's entire fleet was less than 5,000 vessels, and most of those were small patrol craft. The math was simple and terrible. They could not win a direct fight. "What is our answer going to be, Admiral?" Vance looked at her with those iron eyes. "That is why I am calling you, Captain Chen. You are going to be our representative. You will go to Nexus Prime and stand before the Council." Sarah blinked in surprise. "Me? Admiral? I am just a ship captain. Surely a diplomat or a politician would be more suitable." "No," Vance said firmly. The council has seen our diplomats. They have seen our politicians with their soft words and careful smiles. They think we are weak because we try to talk instead of fight. They need to see something different. They need to see a warrior. Sarah straightened her spine. She was a warrior. She had fought pirates in the outer colonies. She had faced down alien raiders who wanted to steal human children for their slave markets. She had never backed down from a fight in her life. What will I tell them, Admiral? What is humanity's answer? Vance reached into his uniform and pulled out a small data chip. He held it up so she could see it. Our answer is contained in this chip. It is sealed with the highest encryption. You will not open it until you stand before the council. When they ask for humanity's response, you will open the chip and read what is inside. Sarah frowned. You are not going to tell me what it says. No. I want your reaction to be genuine. I want the council to see a human learning our answer at the same moment they do. Trust me, Captain. Trust humanity. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the stars continued their silent watch. Somewhere out there, 10,000 alien warships waited to destroy everything she loved. Her home, her people, her species. I trust you, Admiral, she said finally. I will go to Nexus Prime. I will face the council. Vance nodded slowly. Something that might have been pride flickered in his old eyes. A shuttle is being prepared for you. You will have an escort of council ships. They want to make sure you arrive safely so they can hear you beg for mercy. I have never begged for anything in my life. I know, Captain. That is why I chose you. The hologram began to fade. But Vance spoke. One last time. Sarah, whatever happens in that chamber, know that you carry the spirit of every human who has ever lived. Every person who has ever refused to kneel. Every soul who chose death over slavery. You are not just one woman. You are humanity. The hologram disappeared. Sarah stood alone in the conference room, holding the small data chip in her hand. It was light. So light for something that held the fate of an entire species. She walked to the door and opened it. Commander Williams was waiting outside, his face full of questions. Prepare my shuttle, Sarah said. Captain, what is happening? Sarah looked at the data chip one more time. Then she put it in her pocket, close to her heart. The galaxy wants to know if humanity will kneel. I am going to give them our answer. She walked toward the shuttle bay, her footsteps echoing through the metal halls. Behind her, the stars watched in silence, waiting to see what the young species called humanity would do when faced with the end of everything. The shuttle was small and lonely in the vast emptiness of space. Captain Sarah Chen sat in the pilot seat, her hands resting on the controls. Through the front window, she could see her escort. 6 alien warships surrounded her, each one larger than the entire building where she had grown up on Earth. The ships belonged to the Vorath, one of the elder species of the Galaxy Council. They were made of living crystal that grew and changed over thousands of years. The Vorath themselves were beautiful and terrible. They were tall beings of blue and purple crystal, with faces that never showed emotion. They had existed for 9 million years. To them, humanity was younger than a baby. Sarah watched the crystal ships glide through space. Each one could destroy her shuttle with a single shot. Each one carried weapons that humanity could not even understand, let alone fight against. And these 6 ships were nothing, a tiny fraction of the force that waited to crush her people. She turned away from the window and looked at the data chip in her hand. Such a small thing. Admiral Vance had told her not to open it until she stood before the council. But the temptation burned inside her. What word could possibly save humanity from this? Submit. That was what the council wanted. One word of surrender, and the human race would live. They would become servants. Yes, slaves in everything but name. But they would live. Sarah thought about her grandmother. The old woman had died 10 years ago, but Sarah still remembered her stories. Stories about Earth before the stars. Stories about wars and famines and plagues. Stories about how humanity had almost destroyed itself a dozen times. We are stubborn, her grandmother used to say. Stupid and stubborn. We do not know when to quit. That is our greatest weakness. It is also our greatest strength. The console beeped. A message was coming through from the lead Vorath ship. Sarah pressed the button to receive it. A Vorath face appeared on the screen. It was like looking at a statue carved from amethyst. The alien's voice was cold and musical, like wind chiming through ice. Human vessel. We will arrive at Nexus Prime in 4 hours. You will follow our guidance to the docking platform. You will not deviate from the assigned path. You will not attempt to communicate with any other vessels. Do you understand these instructions? I understand, Sarah replied. Good. The Council is eager to hear humanity's answer. They expect you to be reasonable. Ground. The screen went dark before Sarah could respond. Reasonable. What did that word even mean to beings who had ruled the galaxy for millions of years? To them, reasonable meant doing what you were told. Reasonable meant knowing your place. Reasonable meant kneeling. Sarah leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. She let her mind drift through the memories of humanity's short time among the stars. She remembered the stories of first contact, how a human exploration ship had stumbled into Vorath space 300 years ago. How the Vorath had looked at the tiny human vessel and laughed. Actually laughed. The sound had been recorded and sent back to Earth. The whole planet had heard the galaxy's first reaction to humanity, laughter. But humanity had not turned back. They built more ships. They explored more space. They found other species who were not as old or as powerful as the Council. They made friends and allies among the young races of the galaxy. And then the demands had started. Sarah remembered learning about them in school. The Council sent messages to Earth, telling humanity what they must do. Give us your weapons, the Council said. We will protect you. You do not need to protect yourselves. Humanity had said no. Give us your artificial intelligence technology, the Council said. It is too dangerous for a young species to possess. Humanity had said no. Give us your young people to serve in our armies, the Council said. It is an honor to fight for the elder species. Humanity had said no. Each refusal had been met with threats. Each threat had been met with silence. The Council had expected humanity to break, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. But humans did not beg. They just kept building. And now, the waiting was over. Sarah opened her eyes and looked out the window again. In the distance, she could see something growing larger. Nexus Prime, the heart of the Galaxy Council. A station so old that no one remembered who had built it. It was the size of a small moon, covered in towers and domes and structures that defied human understanding. Thousands of ships surrounded the station. Ships from every species in the Council. Ships of crystal and metal and living flesh. Ships that ran on power sources humanity could not even name. It was the greatest gathering of alien might in the history of the galaxy. And somewhere in the middle of all that power, one human woman would stand alone and speak for her entire species. Sarah touched the data chip again. What if the answer was wrong? What if Admiral Vance had made a mistake? What if she walked into that chamber and said the wrong thing, and her entire species was destroyed because of her? No. She pushed the fear down deep inside her. She was a captain of the human fleet. She had faced death before. She would face it again, and she would not break. The console beeped once more. They were approaching the docking platform. Sarah straightened her uniform and checked her appearance in a small mirror. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, but her gaze was steady and her jaw was firm. Grandmother, she whispered to the empty shuttle. I hope you were right about us. I hope we are stubborn enough. The shuttle glided toward the massive station. Around her, The Vorith ships moved like sharks, escorting a minnow to the jaws of a whale. Ahead, Nexus Prime waited with all its ancient power and terrible might. Sarah Chen took a deep breath, gripped the data chip tightly, and prepared to face the galaxy. In 4 hours, she would stand before beings who had watched stars be born and die. She would look into eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall, like waves on a beach, and she would give them humanity's answer. Whatever that answer was, the shuttle entered the shadow of Nexus Prime, and the stars disappeared behind walls of alien metal. Sarah felt very small, very alone, very human, but she did not feel afraid. She had come too far to be afraid now. The council chamber was the largest room Sarah Chen had ever seen. It was bigger than some cities. Luxnane, the Ranagrod of Dime. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top, drifting slowly in patterns that might have been natural or might have been controlled by ancient machines. The walls curved upward like the inside of a hollow mountain, covered in carvings that told the history of 1,000,000 years. Sarah walked alone across the floor. Her boots clicked against stone that was older than human civilization. Above her, arranged on floating platforms that circled the chamber like rings around a planet, sat the representatives of 47 species. She recognized some of them from her training. The crystalline Vorath, tall and cold and beautiful. The Cathari, insectoid creatures with clicking mandibles and compound eyes that saw in spectrums humans could not imagine. The Nebulons, beings of living gas contained in magnetic fields, shifting and flowing like colored smoke. The Drothkar, massive lizard-like warriors covered in scales harder than steel, and dozens of others. Species that flew and species that crawled. Species that breathed oxygen and species that breathed poison. Species that lived for thousands of years and species that passed memories from parent to child in an unbroken chain of consciousness. All of them looked down at the small human woman walking across the ancient floor. Sarah felt their eyes on her like physical weight. The chamber was designed to make visitors feel small and weak. It was designed to break spirits before a single word was spoken. She understood this, and understanding it helped her resist it. She reached the center of the chamber and stopped. A circle of light illuminated her from above. She stood in that circle and waited. Silence filled the chamber. The kind of silence that had weight and texture. The kind of silence that could crush you if you let it. Then a voice spoke. It was deep and ancient, resonating through the chamber like thunder from a distant storm. The voice belonged to High Arbiter Zixthal, the leader of the council. Sarah looked up and saw him on the highest platform. Zixthal was a serpentine creature, long and thick, covered in scales that shifted between gold and green. His body coiled around his platform like a living rope. His head was crowned with a crest of bone and metal, symbols of his office. His eyes were yellow with black slits, and they held an intelligence that had seen epochs pass. "Human," he said. "You stand before the Galaxy Council." Sarah said nothing. She had been told that she would be allowed to speak only when directly asked a question. "Your species has existed among the stars for 300 of your years." Zixthal continued. "In that time, you have been offered many gifts: protection, guidance, the wisdom of the elder races. You have refused every gift. You have rejected every offer of friendship." Still, Sarah remained silent. Around her, the representatives of 47 species watched and waited. "We gave you the chance to join the great family of civilized beings. We asked only for small tokens of respect, small signs of gratitude. You refused." The Arbiter's voice grew colder. "We asked for your weapons. You refused. We asked for your dangerous technologies. You refused. We asked for service in our great armies. You refused." Zixthal's massive head moved closer, leaning down from his platform until Sarah could see her own reflection in his ancient eyes. "We have been patient. We have been merciful. But patience has limits, even for those who have lived as long as we have. Your refusals have become an insult. Your defiance has become a disease that threatens to spread to other young species. This cannot be allowed. Sarah felt her heart beating fast, but she kept her face calm and still. The hegemony fleet surrounds your birth system, Zixthal said. 10,000 warships from 12 species. Forces have also been positioned at each of your 47 colony worlds. Your species is surrounded, trapped, helpless. The word hung in the air. Helpless. Sarah almost smiled. Humans had been helpless before. They had never stayed that way for long. We offer you one final chance, the Arbiter declared. One last opportunity to save your species from extinction. Submit to the Galaxy Council. Accept your place as a servant species. Give us your weapons, your technology, your obedience. In return, you will be allowed to live. He paused, letting the weight of his words fill the chamber. Refuse, and the cleansing will begin. Your worlds will burn. Your cities will fall. In 1,000 years, no one will remember that humans ever existed. Silence again. Every eye in the chamber was fixed on Sarah Chen, now human. You have been sent to deliver your species' answer. The Galaxy Council asks one simple question. Zixthal's voice rose until it echoed from every wall, every platform, every ancient stone. Will humanity submit? This was the moment. Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out the data chip. Her hands were steady as she broke the seal and inserted it into her personal display unit. Text appeared on the small screen. Just one word. Sarah stared at it for a long moment. Then she began to laugh. The sound was shocking in the silent chamber. Representatives of ancient species shifted uncomfortably on their platforms. High Arbiter Zeeks, Thal's eyes narrowed. You find extinction amusing, human? Sarah looked up at him, still smiling. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had just been told a secret, the smile of someone who understood something that no one else in the room understood yet. No, she said. I find your question amusing. You ask if humanity will submit. You really do not know us at all. She stepped forward, out of the circle of light, moving closer to Zixthal's platform. Guards around the chamber tensed, but she ignored them. You have watched us for 300 years. You have studied us. You have sent spies to live among us. And you still do not understand the most basic thing about human beings. These lesting the Rupid. You have watched us for 300 years. And what is that? Zixthal asked, his voice dangerous. Sarah Chen looked at the High Arbiter of the Galaxy Council. She looked at the representatives of 47 species, who had ruled the stars for millions of years. She looked at all their power and all their might and all their ancient wisdom, and she was not afraid. You will find out, she said, in just a moment. She activated her communication link, broadcasting on every frequency in the galaxy. And she prepared to give humanity's answer. Every communication device in the galaxy crackled to life. On 10,000 warships surrounding Earth. On 47 human colony worlds, waiting for death. On alien stations and outposts, scattered across the stars. On Nexus Prime itself, where billions of beings stopped what they were doing to listen. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the center of the council chamber and spoke one word. No. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a galaxy holding its breath. It was the silence before a great storm. It was the silence of 47 species trying to understand what they had just heard. High Arbiter Zixthal moved first. His massive serpentine body uncoiled from his platform, and his voice filled the chamber like thunder. You refuse? You stand before the greatest powers in the galaxy, surrounded by a fleet that could destroy your species in hours, and you refuse? Yes, Sarah said calmly. Do you understand what you are saying? Do you understand that you have just condemned your entire species to death? Sarah looked up at the ancient serpent. She looked at all the representatives staring down at her with shock and anger and disbelief. And she smiled. I understand exactly what I am saying. Humanity refuses to submit. Humanity refuses to kneel. Humanity refuses to become your slaves. A Cathari representative leaned forward, its mandibles clicking rapidly. This is madness. You have no chance of survival. Your fleet is tiny compared to ours. Your technology is primitive. You cannot win. Maybe not. Sarah admitted. Maybe you will destroy us. Maybe you will burn our worlds and kill our children and scatter our ashes across the void. But we will fight you every step of the way. And here is something you need to understand about human beings. She turned slowly, looking at each platform, making eye contact with species that had existed since before Earth's sun was born. We do not know how to give up, the Arbiter laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. Pretty words, human. But words do not stop weapons. Words do not save lives. Your defiance is meaningless. Is it? Sarah asked. She touched her communication device again. This time, she sent a single signal. A code that Admiral Vance had given her, along with the data chip. A code that would change everything. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sensor displays around the council chamber began to flash. Alarms started to sound. Representatives on their platforms looked at personal devices, and Sarah saw expressions of confusion turn to expressions of shock. What is happening? Zixthal demanded. What have you done? Sarah pointed to the main display screen that dominated one wall of the chamber. It showed the space around Nexus Prime. The screen was filled with dots representing ships. Blue dots for council species. Red dots for humans. There had been no red dots a moment ago. Now, there were thousands. You brought 10,000 ships to threaten us, Sarah said. You thought we were weak. You thought we were unprepared. You thought 300 years was not enough time for a young species to prepare for war. More red dots appeared. And more. And more. You were wrong. Admiral Vance's voice suddenly filled the chamber, broadcast from his flagship, the UES Defiance. His old voice was steady and strong. This is Admiral James Vance, of the United Earth Navy. For 300 years, you have threatened my species. For 300 years, you have demanded our submission. For 300 years, we have said no. The red dots kept multiplying. They were appearing from everywhere. From asteroid fields where ships had been hidden. From the dark spaces between stars. From places the Council had never thought to look. And for 300 years, Vance continued, we have been building. In secret. In silence. In the shadows where your ancient eyes could not see. The numbers appeared on the screen. The Council representatives stared at them in disbelief. 30,000 ships. Humanity had built 30,000 warships in secret. 3 times the size of the hegemony fleet. Hidden throughout the galaxy. Waiting for this moment. How is this possible? A Vorath representative demanded. We watched you. We monitored your shipyards. We knew every vessel you constructed. You watched our official shipyards, Sarah said. You did not watch the others. The hidden facilities in asteroid belts. The secret construction yards in gas giant clouds. The factory ships that built other ships in the darkness between systems. She stepped toward the main screen, gesturing at the vast human fleet that now surrounded Nexus Prime. You thought we were children playing with toys. You thought our defiance was just foolish pride. But we knew this day would come. We knew that one day, you would try to crush us. And we prepared. High Arbiter Zixthal's scales had turned pale. For the first time in thousands of years, fear flickered in his ancient eyes. This changes nothing, he hissed. Our combined forces still outnumber you. Our technology is still superior. Maybe, Sarah agreed. But now it is a fight. A real fight. And here is something else you should know about humans. Arbiter, we have been fighting since the day we climbed down from the trees. We have been killing each other for thousands of years. We have developed war into an art form. She looked directly into his yellow eyes. You have lived in peace for millions of years. You have forgotten what it means to truly fight. We never forgot. Admiral Vance spoke again. The human fleet will not fire unless fired upon. We do not want war. We have never wanted war. We only wanted to be left alone. But if you attack us, we will defend ourselves. And we will never, ever stop. The chamber was silent. Representatives looked at each other. At the display showing the impossible human fleet. At the small woman standing alone in the center of the floor. This is your choice, Sarah said. You can try to destroy us. Maybe you will succeed. Maybe you will wipe humanity from the galaxy. But it will cost you. It will cost you more than you can imagine. Ships, soldiers, resources, time. By the time you are finished with us, you will be weak. And there are other young species watching, waiting, learning. She paused, letting her words sink in. Or you can accept our answer. You can let us live in peace. You can stop demanding our submission. And start treating us as equals. The choice is yours. High Arbiter Zeexthal stared at her for a long time. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Finally, the ancient serpent spoke. This is not over, human. No, Sarah agreed. It is just beginning. But at least now it is a conversation between equals. She turned and began walking toward the exit. No one stopped her. No one spoke. The representatives of 47 species watched in stunned silence as one human woman walked out of their chamber. She had come alone. She was leaving, having changed the balance of power in the entire galaxy. At the door, she paused and looked back one more time. My grandmother used to tell me that humans are stubborn. She was right. We do not know how to give up. We do not know how to quit. And we will never, ever kneel. Then Captain Sarah Chen walked out of the council chamber, leaving the most powerful beings in the galaxy to wonder what they had just witnessed. And across the stars, the word spread. Humanity had said no. The hegemony fleet did not fire. For 17 hours, the two forces faced each other in the space around Nexus Prime. 30,000 human ships. 10,000 council ships. Enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. And not a single shot was exchanged. Then, slowly, the hegemony fleet began to withdraw. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance, standing beside Admiral James Vance. The old man had come aboard personally to greet her when she returned from the council chamber. He had saluted her. The crew had cheered. But now, in this quiet moment, they simply watched together as the greatest threat humanity had ever faced melted away into the darkness between stars. They are really leaving, Sarah said softly. For now, Vance replied. This is not the end, Captain. It is just the beginning. They will come back. They will try again. This is a war that will last generations, Sarah nodded. She had known this from the moment she spoke that single word. No was not the end of the story. It was the first line of a new chapter. How long have you been planning this, Admiral? Vance smiled. It was a tired smile. The smile of a man who had carried a heavy secret for a very long time. The planning started before I was born. Before my father was born. The first generation of humans in space realized that one day, the Council would demand our submission. They started building in secret even then. Each generation added more ships, more weapons, more hidden bases. The project has been passed down from admiral to admiral for 300 years. And no one knew? A few people knew. Those who needed to know. The rest of humanity went about their lives, never realizing that in the shadows, we were preparing for this day. He looked out at the stars. It was the greatest secret in human history. And today, we finally got to use it. Sarah thought about that. Generations of men and women working in secret. Building ships they would never sail. Preparing for a war they might never see. All so that one day, a woman could stand before the Galaxy Council and say one word without fear. Thank you, she said quietly. All of you. Everyone who came before. Do not thank us yet, Vance replied. We have survived this day. But the hard work is just beginning. He was right. In the days and weeks that followed, Sarah saw just how much work there was to do. The Galaxy Council did not officially recognize humanity as equals, but they stopped making demands. They stopped sending threatening messages. They stopped treating humans like children who needed to be disciplined. The word had spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity had said no, and the Council had backed down. For the first time in millions of years, the elder species were afraid, and they were not the only ones paying attention. Sarah was in her quarters aboard the Defiance when Commander Williams brought her a strange report. Messages were coming in from across the galaxy. Encrypted communications from species she had never heard of. Young species, conquered species, servant species. What are they saying? Sarah asked. Williams looked shaken. They are saying no, Captain. They are using our word. They are refusing to obey their masters. There are reports of uprisings on a dozen worlds. Slave species are fighting back. Servant races are demanding freedom. Sarah sat down heavily in her chair. She had known that humanity's defiance would have consequences. But she had not expected this. She had not expected this. She had not expected this. She had not expected their single word to become a spark that would set the galaxy on fire. What have we started? She whispered. Over the next months, the reports kept coming. The Vorath crystal mines had been shut down by workers who refused to dig. The Cathari hive worlds were in chaos, as lower castes demanded equal treatment. Even the mighty Drathkar were facing rebellion from species they had conquered thousands of years ago. One word. That was all it had taken. One word from one species. Spoken at the right moment, in the right place, with the right courage behind it. No. Admiral Vance called a meeting of the High Command. Sarah was there, along with the other senior officers of the human fleet. Vance looked older than he had, just a few months ago. The weight of what was happening seemed to press down on his shoulders. The galaxy is changing, he said. What we did in that chamber has changed everything. Species that have been slaves for millions of years are rising up. The Council is struggling to maintain control. Some of the elder species are blaming us. Some are afraid of us. Some are asking to speak with us. He looked around the table. We need to decide what kind of future we want. Do we hide in our corner of the galaxy and hope the storm passes? Or do we step forward and help build something new? The room was silent. Sarah thought about her grandmother again. She thought about all the stories of humanity's past. The wars, the suffering, the terrible things humans had done to each other, but also the good things, the kindness, the courage, the refusal to accept that things could not be better. We should help, Sarah said. We should stand with the species who are fighting for their freedom. We should show the galaxy that humanity is not just good at saying no. We are also good at saying yes. Yes to freedom. Yes to equality. Yes to a future where species are not judged by how old they are or how powerful they are. Vance nodded slowly. I was hoping someone would say that. He pressed a button, and a holographic map of the galaxy appeared above the table. It was covered in lights. Blue lights for Council territories, red lights for human territories, and now, green lights for worlds where the old order was being challenged. These are the species that have asked for our help. Dozens of them. Species that have been under the Council's boot for longer than Earth has existed. They heard what we said. They saw what we did. And now they want to stand with us. Sarah looked at the map. So many lights. So many species. So many beings who had heard humanity's one-word answer and found hope in it. It will be dangerous, Vance said. The Council will not let their empire fall without a fight. There will be wars. There will be sacrifices. Many of us will not live to see the end of this. He looked directly at Sarah. But we did not get here by being safe. We got here by being stubborn. by refusing to give up, by saying no when everyone else said yes. Sarah smiled. It was the same smile she had worn in the council chamber. The smile of someone who was not afraid of the future. "Then let us be stubborn together," she said. "Let us show the galaxy what happens when free species stand side by side." Admiral Vance raised his hand in a salute. Around the table, every officer did the same. "For humanity," Vance said. "For freedom," Sarah replied. And in that moment, in that room, surrounded by the men and women who had built a secret fleet in the darkness, Captain Sarah Chen knew that the galaxy would never be the same. One word had started it all. One word had broken the chains that had held the galaxy for millions of years. One word had shown every species in every corner of every star system that the oldest and most powerful were not unbeatable. No. Such a small word, such a simple word, such a human word, and it had changed everything. Outside the windows of the Defiance, the stars burned bright and endless. Somewhere out there, species were rising. Empires were falling. A new galaxy was being born, and at the heart of it all, humanity stood tall. Not because they were the strongest, not because they were the wisest, but because when the galaxy asked them to kneel, they had the courage to refuse. They had said no, and that had made all the difference.